Hi there, and welcome to this 2015 Year in Review for the City of Lakeville. I'm Justin Miller, the Lakeville City Administrator, and 2015 was certainly a very productive and busy year in the City of Lakeville. Over the next hour or so, we're going to talk with some of the people who helped make that happen. And our first guest today is Public Works Director Chris Petrie. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Justin.
So one of the most visible construction projects over the past year was the roundabout at County Roads 50 and 60. Could you tell us a little bit about the background of that project and how it's going so far?
Sure. Well, the background, starting with the roundabout itself, of course, where this all started was back in 2009, where the city and the county applied for a federal grant to improve that intersection. Of course, at that time and when we applied for the grant, it was unknown what that intersection would look like, that if it would be a roundabout or a signalized intersection. But through the use of consultants and public outreach and other opportunities that the city and the county participated in, we came to the realization that a roundabout was the most effective option for that particular intersection. So with that, the city and the county began planning for the roundabout construction that took a number of years. And ultimately, construction started in 2014 with construction outside the roadway with private utilities and some other work. And then, as everyone well knows in the community, the brunt of the construction occurred in 2015 when there was a complete closure that started in May of this past year in 2015 for about 4 months until it was ultimately opened for traffic at the end of August here in 2015. And so far the roundabout's been functioning well. I think everybody in the community knows there have been a few minor fender benders and accidents. Luckily there has been no major accidents or no serious injuries. But it's just a learning curve. The thing that folks have to remember is there's two key components to navigating a multi-lane roundabout, and that's picking your lane and yielding to other motorists, no matter what lane you're in or what direction you're going.
Great. And we know that that's just part of some more projects that are going on throughout the city, one of which was a major reconstruction effort through some of our residential neighborhoods. Could you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, this year our 2015 street reconstruction project was really centered, or I shouldn't even say centered, but located in kind of the northeast corner of the city, west of Cedar Avenue, south of 160th Street, kind of north of 170th Street to give folks a bearing on where it was. That particular area consisted of about 8 miles of streets that the city reconstructed, along with complete replacement of all the water main. Now that's a 2-year phased project, so this year we completed about 4 miles of the 8 miles, and then in 2016 we'll complete the remaining 4 miles. This is being done by 2 contractors because of the size and the scope of the project.
And we're taking a little bit different of an approach with some of the street projects moving forward, especially relating to our water mains. Isn't that correct?
That's correct. What we found is, unfortunately, all across Lakeville we have some very corrosive soils, and we found that this proves to be corrosive to our cast iron and our ductile iron water main. So with that, we've tried to look at elongating the life and the longevity of that infrastructure, and how can we do that, because it's simply too costly to go in and replace all of the water main all in one shot. What we found this year on the 2015 street reconstruction project in particular was that we had such a high number and a high frequency of water main breaks. We had nearly 50 water main breaks in the last number of years in this area, that it was more cost effective to replace all of the water main. Moving forward, we're reevaluating each area for street reconstruction and looking at the water main to see, in fact, if we can elongate the life of the pipe by installing some different cathodic protection or corrosion protection on the main, or in fact if we need to replace it. So a good example is in the 2016 street reconstruction area. A portion of that we will be replacing all of the water main. However, another portion of it we will be adding cathodic protection and other corrosion protection equipment to extend the useful life of that infrastructure.
So that's talking about some pipes underground. If anybody who's driven by Holyoke and Hyvee, they see a new water tower going up. Can you talk a little bit about that and what that's going to provide for the city?
Sure. Yeah, exactly what they see at the intersection of Holyoke and 190th Street is a new elevated composite tank or water tower that will hold about 2 million gallons of water. Of course, that serves a number of purposes for the city, not only from a public safety standpoint for fire protection, but it also serves the rest of our community and our utility customers for providing clean, drinkable, potable water to our nearly 19,000 now water utility customers. And that kind of came to fruition after a study was completed back in 2013 that I really updated our water supply plan and identified areas that we would need to improve and expand our water distribution system.
So with that growth, you talked about the 19,000 or so customers. Are we going to have to build another plant, or what are we planning on to treat that future growth?
No, so in conjunction, and thanks for asking, in conjunction with that water supply plan update, we also did an update to our water treatment facility expansion study that was originally completed in the early 2000s, and we updated that as well a couple of years ago. The outcome of that was we found that by doing some improvements to our current facility, we could eliminate the need for a satellite water treatment facility that we at one time were planning on constructing in another part of the community, but in fact just expand and make some improvements to our existing facility that would meet the needs of the community until our ultimate build out. So in the interim, we don't need to do that ultimate build out of that facility until about 10 to 12 years down the road, but in the interim we've done some other improvements to the facility just this past year, which have included expanding our reservoir that's behind the facility from 3.1 million gallons to about 4.1 million gallons, so we've added 1 million gallons. We've expanded the use of our chemical feed systems so that we can treat more water that goes through, and we've ultimately added some additional pumps and other equipment. All of that allows us to increase the production of that facility as it sits from about 20 million gallons a day to 26.5 million gallons a day, which is huge, and like I mentioned, adds another 10 to 12 years until we're going to need to do that ultimate expansion.
So Chris, moving on into 2016, we're going to continue to see a lot of construction projects, either city or county. Can you talk about specifically about what projects we're partnering with Dakota County on for next year?
So specifically with Dakota County, we have a very exciting project, and that's the reconstruction of Dodd Boulevard from County Road 60. And Dodd Boulevard, I should say, is also known as County Road 9, but from County Road 60 or 185th Street, which is right near Century Middle School and Lifetime Fitness, to the south to about 194th Street, which is the road that runs along kind of the northern border of North High School. So it's currently a 2-lane roadway with a rural section and ditches. It will be improved and will be consistent with the remaining portions of Dodd on either side, both north and south of that segment, to a 4-lane divided roadway. And there will also be a signal installed at County Road 60 or 185th Street. So a very exciting project. Currently, as we near the end of 2015, we're just getting ready to actually go out for bid for the project shortly after the first of the year.
And then we're also going to be reconstructing some residential streets. Maybe could you let everybody know exactly where that's going to be for next year?
We are. So not only, like I mentioned when we were talking about 2015, do we have the second phase of our 2015 street reconstruction project, which is again west of Cedar Avenue, south of 160th, and kind of east of Hyvee and north of 170th. That'll be phase 2, about another 4 miles there. And then we have another 6 to 8 miles of roads to reconstruct that are really along the Highway 50 corridor, starting kind of in the northern part of the Highway 50 corridor, just south of 35, with some of our South Fork commercial and multifamily residential area. And then as you move further south and south of the 50-60 intersection, we have some neighborhoods along that corridor that will also be reconstructing the streets in. Some of those homes along Lake Marion and other areas like that. That's our 2016 street reconstruction project.
So there will be some short-term inconvenience next year once again, but we know for the long-term good of the streets and our infrastructure, it's needed. So we appreciate our residents for taking the patience with that, and thank you and your department for all they do, and thank you for joining us today.
And thanks for having me, Justin.
Our next guest is from the Lakeville Police Department, and it's Police Chief Jeff Long. Chief, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for letting me come.
So Chief, it's no secret that nationwide there's been a lot of attention on police and police activities, and fortunately we haven't had anything like that go on here in Lakeville. But could you talk a little bit about the community response and how our community has expressed their gratitude to the police department?
Yeah, I think we're very fortunate here in Lakeville. Number one, we have, in my opinion, a very good police department, and we're rewarded by the community for that. During this difficult time in 2015, we've had a lot of people coming into the police department just to say thank you. Thank you for helping them with something. They've been bringing cookies, they've been bringing meals. We've had somebody drew me a picture on Thanksgiving and said they were thankful for the police department. It's just really been a neat situation. I've never, in the 27 years I've been doing this, I haven't seen the culture towards police like this in such a negative light, but I have never seen such a positive reaction from one community as I've seen in Lakeville. So we're just really appreciative, and I think our officers really look forward to coming in each day to serve this community, but also just to see what they've been doing for us. It's been great.
That's great to hear. A lot of the focus nationwide, and even here in Lakeville, has been about mental health as well. And I know our police department has taken a progressive stance on that. Could you talk a little bit about what your department is doing in that regards?
Yeah. One of the things that police departments do is we're first responders. So when a crisis first hits, we go out, we resolve it, and then we move on. However, with something like mental health, one of the things we've noticed is that's a repeat call. Because typically, families don't know what to do. They haven't encountered this before. So someone in the family is having a mental health crisis. We refer them to a crisis center. We get them some immediate help, and then they're back home. So what we're doing is we thought, let's try a new model. Let's follow up before we get that call to make sure that the family's getting the support they need, the patient's getting the help they need, and try to prevent some of the repeat calls, but really be proactive in helping these people to make sure they're getting the help they need. So we've enlisted the help of our chaplain corps and a number of specially trained officers that will call these people and contact the family, and we've had just great success with this.
Well, that's great to hear, and I know the proactive nature of the department is really well received throughout the community. Another thing that that's very visible is our traffic enforcement unit. Yes. And I know that's been an increased emphasis of yours lately. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed about Lakeville in the last 2 years is we have really good roadways. They're fairly new, they're wide, the speed limits are fairly high, and we have a lot of cut-through traffic. We have Cedar, we have 35, we have Dodd, so a lot of people are coming through our city. So one of the things that I've noticed is the high speeds, again, the cut-through traffic, the fail to stop for stop signs, things such as that. And then also during last campaign, when some of the council members and mayor were going through neighborhoods, they relayed to me that they were hearing from neighbors that they were upset about traffic speeds and so forth. So we really took a renewed interest in it and began to look at where the problems are. So we began to focus of where are the accidents occurring, and we try to center our enforcement around those areas, but also areas where people suspect there might be a problem. If neighbors are seeing cut-through traffic endangering kids or crosswalks, we try to pay special attention to that area. One of the things that we take pride in is the fact that education is a huge part of this. It's not just about handing out tickets. As a matter of fact, it's typically about 1 ticket per 3 stops. So 2/3 are getting warnings, and it's really about education. That's what we want. We want to stop the behavior.
And I know that when you pull somebody over, a lot of times it might be for a traffic enforcement issue, but a lot of times it does lead to other things, and in some ways can be a crime prevention tool as well. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. One of the great things about traffic enforcement is its high visibility. Typically, criminals don't want to go where they see squad cars, so the more times they see lights, the less likely they are to come through. But as you said, when we stop cars, keeping in mind that criminals have to get from point A to point B. If they're burglarizing houses or if they're committing theft, that doesn't mean that we're suspicious of everybody we stop. It just means that our officers are on alert for something suspicious when they do stop a car. And that is oftentimes how we will solve crime, is just by good police work off of a traffic stop. The other thing that's important is that many people are driving with a revoked license or without insurance. And these are the people that are sharing the roadway with you. So our goal is to get them off the roadway and create a safe experience for the drivers so they can get from point A to point B without getting into an accident with a revoked driver, somebody without insurance, or somebody that's just driving carelessly.
You know, it's great that you brought up the safe driving part of it, and unfortunately, there are a lot of people out there who take or make bad decisions, and some of those involve driving while intoxicated. Could you talk a little bit about the approaches that we've taken recently and to try to help alleviate those concerns?
Yeah. Lakeville was awarded a grant through the state of Minnesota for DWI enforcement. So we now have one specific car that is paid for by the state. When I say car, personnel and the vehicle. So it's not costing the city necessarily any money, but yet we can go out and enforce every shift this person works. He's just looking for intoxicated drivers. One of the things that I think I try to remind people about is when our officers are out, we're taking a lot of calls, and we don't often get to make a lot of stops, but yet we're arresting a lot of people for DUIs. So we always felt if we had one specific car and that was their primary goal, that we would find a substantially higher number, which we have, and that would make the roadways safer for everyone else. It's hard to believe that in 2015 people are still driving intoxicated, but they are, and again, we're just trying to create safe roadways. So we're very excited about this grant, and we'll have it for the next few years.
And if I remember correctly, one of our officers received a countywide award for, I believe, what they call a hat trick. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we had one officer that was working the traffic safety project for Dakota County, and during that shift, he made 3 DWI arrests. So if you can picture just one officer making a few stops and making those arrests, imagine how many people are really driving intoxicated on our roadways. So yeah, we were very excited about that award for Officer Stevens.
Well, thanks to Officer Stevens, absolutely. Another thing that's received a lot of national attention is body cams, and I know that we haven't gone there as a department yet, but we have done something new and have new cameras within our squads. Isn't that correct?
Yep. In 2015, we put cameras in all of our squad cars. This is something that obviously has been a trend throughout the country. It documents what we do. It doesn't document what we necessarily do away from the traffic stop, but it helps for things such as court testimony. It's a unique system. So an example would be if we're running radar or we're monitoring a stop sign and we see somebody run it. When we turn on our lights, that activates the camera, but the camera then backs up for 30 seconds, so we'll actually get the violation on camera. So it's a good tool for both us and the public. We have not yet gone to body cameras. That's something obviously that's getting a lot of attention in our state legislature and so forth. So we're kind of letting that shake out and let the rules get set up, and then we'll move to that. But the video cameras in the car have been a great addition.
And I know you and the rest of your officers are very active in the Lakeville community as well. Could you talk a little bit about some of the community service initiatives that we're taking a part of?
Yeah. We have a great staff, and one of our new projects in 2015 was something called Cops for Coats, and that is to benefit the Lewis House, which is a shelter for domestic abuse victims and their children. But oftentimes they're rushed out of their home and they end up at the Lewis House without a coat, hat, or mittens. And so we decided, wouldn't it be great if we could collect this and turn it over so that these people have jackets in the winter. And the community was very generous. We received over 650 coats in our first year. We're doing it again this year, or this winter, to see how it goes, but very excited about that. We also, during the National Night Out, we collected food for the local food shelves. And we're doing a number of things with the school district, one of which is in the summertime assisting with their learning bus. It's a bus that travels throughout the city, and our officers each week will read a book to kids in a certain part of town, and it just really gets us engaged and connected with the kids.
Well, Chief, thank you. Thank you to your department and for keeping all of us safe in Lakeville, and thank you for joining us today.
And thank you for having me.
Joining us now is our Director of Economic and Community Development, Dave Olson. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Justin.
So anybody who drives through town recently knows that there's a lot of building activity going on, especially on the residential side. Could you talk a little bit about the permit activity we've seen in 2015?
Sure. as it's been for the last couple of years, but this year it's been supplemented by other types of development we'll talk about in a second. But residential developments remained really strong again in 2015. We've issued 324 single-family permits through the month of November. And December, with the warm, mild weather, is not slowing down either. We had one day last week where we issued 9 new single-family permits in one day in December, which hasn't happened, I don't think, in quite a while. So residential development is strong. It's spread through a number of different developers all across town, so there's a real variety in different types of locations for people interested in buying a new home in Lakeville. The other thing that's encouraging as well is that the townhome market seems to be starting to come back a little bit. That's been pretty quiet for the last few years. I think prior to the recession there was kind of a surplus inventory of both townhome lots and townhome units, and that seems to be absorbed, and developers are coming in both with a couple different styles of townhomes. Some may be designed more for empty nesters, so single level type townhomes. And we're starting to see some of the other type of townhomes where they're more of a 2-story type product that's probably targeted towards the other end of the market, more on the single or first-time home buyers. So I think we've issued 45 townhome permits through November compared to about half that many at the same time last year. So residential development appears strong. On the planning side, the planning department staff is, and I'm going to check my note here, but we've approved over 720 new single-family lots through this year. And most of the time it's about a year's lag between when the lot's actually approved and final plat's been recorded to when they actually start building on those lots, because it takes better part of one construction season to put in the streets, the utilities, and do all the necessary grading. But along the same line as we were just referring to, the townhome activity is picked up, and there's a number of about 70 detached townhome lots created and about 80 attached townhome lots created. So that market seems to be picking up as well.
So where does the City of Lakeville rank in the metro in terms of how many homes are being built?
Based on the numbers that we receive from an independent organization called the Builders Association of the Twin Cities, through November of this year, Lakeville remains the highest. In fact, we haven't been the highest for every month of the year, but we were again in November. I think 33 permits, residential permits issued in November of this year. But at the 324 single families, in addition to the townhome lots, we've been the highest and are the highest, and I don't see that changing with only 1 month remaining in the year. So, and this will be the 3rd year in a row where Lakeville's been the highest in terms of residential permits. The numbers change a little bit when you talk about residential units, and that's in places like Minneapolis, where they're seeing a lot more apartment and condominium development and multifamily style development occurring in places like that, and their total units will be up, but the permits for each separate residential unit, Lakeville will be the highest for the 3rd year in a row.
Well, that's good news. We know Lakeville's a growing community, and not only on the residential side, but we've seen a lot of commercial and industrial activity this year as well. Could you highlight some of the major ones that came through this year?
Sure. And that's what's changed this year. I mentioned earlier that residential activity has been fairly strong for the last couple of years here, but what really changed the perspective this year was the amount of commercial industrial development, and we've seen, and through November we've issued permits for over $44 million worth of commercial industrial development, and that's spread between office and retail and industrial and manufacturing. And so it's a strong indicator, I think, that the business community has decided to invest in either new locations or expanded. And in Lakeville, it's been a pretty healthy combination of existing businesses choosing to expand their facilities or even their location in Lakeville, as well as new companies coming into Lakeville and making significant investments in businesses. So we haven't seen this type of commercial industrial activity since well before the recession. So it's been 8 to 10 years probably since we've seen these kind of numbers.
I think one of the success stories that we can talk about in Lakeville is the retention of mom brands and Post Holdings. Could you talk a little bit about that process and how we were able to work with the state of Minnesota in keeping those high quality jobs here in Lakeville?
Sure. Mom Brands first moved their part of their operation here in 2009, and then a couple years later moved their corporate headquarters to Lakeville, and so they had at one point about 350 headquarter type jobs in Lakeville in 2 buildings, existing buildings that they purchased in the Fairfield Business Campus, which is down near County Road 70 and I-35. In January of this year, it was announced that Mom Brands was selling their whole company. I think the sale price was $1.1 billion to Post Consumer Brands or Post Cereals. And obviously that caused us concern, and we reached out to both companies right away and indicated that we'd certainly like to have and are open to discussions about keeping the headquarters that had been established in Lakeville here under the new ownership. And through several meetings, and the folks at the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development came to the table along with us and staff and the mayor and yourself and I, and we made a pitch to Post to hopefully continue their base of operations here for their new combined cereal division. The other option that was being considered, where Post previously had their cereal headquarters, was in New Jersey. So it was, 2 different markets, distinctly different parts of the country. And I believe it was in May of this year that Post decided to keep their division headquarters, new combined division headquarters here in Lakeville. So not only are the jobs that are, and the deal that was struck, the agreement that was reached with them was that incentives would be provided by both the state and the city if they maintained a minimum of 250 jobs. And latest on that is that not only are those 250 jobs going to be here, but Post is actively hiring more employees, and it could be as high as 300 to 350 jobs when it's all said and done. So big win for the city and the state. And the state came to the table, and Multimeal's been a company that's been in Minnesota from its beginning, so almost 100 years ago. So the state was very interested in trying to see that company keep its headquarters in Lakeville as well, which it helps when we have a partner in the state to meet with and talk with these businesses.
I'm glad you mentioned jobs and incentives, because the City of Lakeville has been very aggressive in reaching out to companies and trying to land them here to either locate or expand in Lakeville. Some of the examples that we've provided financial assistance to would be Serta Simmons Bedding, Mendel Medical and Manufacturing, and BTD. Could you maybe talk a little bit about what the threshold is and what the reasonings are and why we provide that assistance to companies like that?
Sure. Well, and the list you gave included 2 existing businesses that were here and growing and needing additional space to meet their expanding businesses, and then a new national company like Serta Simmons Bedding. And I'll talk about the expansion of the existing businesses first. In both cases, when businesses were expanding, they had specific infrastructure things that they needed to do. In most cases, in order to maximize their available land, they had to either look for off-site or kind of innovative stormwater improvements and things like that add additional cost to the project that they normally wouldn't see. So in exchange for that, the city used a tool called tax increment financing to basically capture some of the additional tax base that's going to be created with these expansions, and use some of that additional tax revenue that's going to be generated to offset some of the company's development costs. And the city, over the recent years, has updated its policies and its criteria, and we have certain thresholds that have to be met in terms of minimum capital investment, as well as the jobs that are either being retained or created. It doesn't do the city a lot of good to incentivize low-wage jobs, but all of these companies are creating jobs that meet or exceed the city's criteria for livable wage jobs, in most cases with benefits, and making significant investments. So, and our Economic Development Commission here at the city, as well as the City Council, have emphasized the importance of business retention as well as business recruitment. And quite honestly, it's a lot easier to keep a business here than to get that's been here in some cases for decades or more, and grow that business here than to try and convince a new business to locate in our community. But that being said, we worked through the state of Minnesota and a regional economic development organization called Greater MSP Serta Simmons Bedding Manufacturing Company, also known as SSB Manufacturing, was looking for a new major manufacturing facility, and they had zeroed in on the Twin Cities market and or immediately south of the Twin Cities, and had gotten their list of sites down to about 5 or possibly 6 sites, I think, in 5 different cities. And Lakeville was fortunate to have 2 sites that were under consideration, and we had to, again, work with them to help them and provide them with some incentives. And again, I will say that the state of Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development was actively involved in the negotiations with this company, and it was decided and announced this past summer that SSB had selected a 23-acre site in a new development in Lakeville, which is kind of exciting, called Interstate South Logistics Park. It's located right in the southwest corner of County Road 70 in Dodd. And so hopefully, the plan is now that they'll break ground on a $15 million manufacturing facility next spring. And with that, they'll bring all new jobs, because their business wasn't here. It's a net gain on all the jobs and approximately 200 new jobs to Lakeville.
Well, the addition of the jobs and the retention of our current jobs is very important, but one of the questions we also get is what new restaurants or new retailers coming to town? And we have some success stories to talk about that as well. Maybe if you could elaborate on those and some that might be coming in next year as well.
Most interesting projects, some of the more interesting projects we worked on the last year, a couple existing buildings in the original downtown Lakeville area, downtown Lakeville, that are being redeveloped and repurposed. And one of those businesses opened a few months ago in what was known as the old Ace Hardware building downtown on Holyoke Avenue, and a restaurant bar by the name of Heavy Metal Grill opened there about 4 months ago. They are actually, the other half of the building is being remodeled right now for a craft brewer company by the name of Angry Inch Brewing Company is going in the other half. And then a third new business downtown, well, actually there's a third and a fourth. The old VFW building, the VFW made the difficult decision here in the last year to close their operation, and they put their building up for sale. It was bought by a local investment company that invests in downtown buildings in downtown Lakeville, and sold to an investment group, being leased to a restaurant investment group that's going to be opening a restaurant called Lakeville Brewing Company in there. It'll be a sit-down restaurant, again, with a microbrewery brewing operation within the building. So it's kind of excited to bring some of these. It's something that has been talked about and identified as a goal for a number of years to try and bring more businesses downtown, the restaurant, entertainment, those types of businesses that draw new people to downtown. So those are just a couple that are going in downtown, and in addition to that, there'll be a new pizza place coming into downtown. The leasehold improvements are being completed right now. It's a franchise called Topper's Pizza. It's going to be opening a store in downtown Lakeville. On the retail side, there's been probably the biggest announcement or start of construction this year is the new Hyvee grocery store. That will also include, besides a grocery store, it'll include a drive-through pharmacy, a separate gas convenience store, car wash, and a sit-down restaurant that will include a full bar as well. So it's part of Hyvee's decision to come into the Twin Cities market. They've opened 2 new stores in the Twin Cities earlier this year, and I think the Lakeville store will be probably the 3rd store that's opened in the Twin Cities and scheduled to be open for business late spring, early summer of 2016. So those are some of the examples of retail and restaurant, and then it goes the gamut from Alina Clinic built and opened a new medical office clinic in Lakeville near County Road 70 and I-35 this summer. A preschool and a Montessori school opened new buildings and constructed new buildings and opened them earlier this fall. So just a real wide variety of commercial industrial development occurring in Lakeville right now.
Well, it's certainly exciting to see all the new homes and businesses going up in Lakeville, and thank you and your department for making all that happen, and thanks for joining us today.
Well, I appreciate it, and it certainly just isn't my department. I mean, all of these projects involve engineering staff, building inspection staff, planning staff, and it really takes a team effort. But yes, you're right, it is an exciting time right now in Lakeville.
Great, thank you. For our final segment, we've decided to go outside City Hall and talk to Superintendent Lisa Snyder from Independent School District 194. Dr. Snyder, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So 2015 was clearly a busy year for the school district as well, and I think it was probably capped off in November when the residents of Lakeville and the school district went out for a referendum election. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that's going to bring forward next year?
Sure. I'll start with, late in 2014, we adopted a new strategic plan. So really that guiding document and the goals and our vision of world-class personalized learning really drove to inform our needs for the next 10 years. So in order to have world-class personalized learning, we have to make sure that our students are future ready, which means a whole new set of skills than typically may have been focused on in schools. So going out for this levy referendum really will help equip the school district with the resources, the staffing, and the equipment needed to be able to personalize learning in lots of ways. So one clear way is really improving our STEM curriculum, and that's science, technology, engineering, and math, but not as separate courses, but as an integrated, project-based, relevant learning experiences K-12. So students do develop those future-ready skills of being more curious and being on problem-solving teams and really working with real issues in their community and in their world. So that's really exciting. And we've already been dabbling with that, both at the high school level and at the elementary level. So now having a comprehensive program, K-12, we see sending out to the world a lot of future scientists and problem solvers. So that's exciting. The levy referendum passing also helps equip the district with a technology infrastructure and a dedicated revenue funding stream for technology and digital tools for learning. So our focus in using digital tools is really a balanced one. We're not going for a one-to-one technology initiative, but rather just so that our students have the access they need for research, for using it as a tool for learning. So creating iMovies, creating presentations, and collaborating in documents with other students on real projects that really are focused on their learning. And that levy referendum, the capital question, also funded our ongoing security needs. We got a really good start in 2015 with access control across our district. So all but our high schools have the access control where visitors do have to either buzz in and present who they are and also swipe their driver's license. So it gives us a much higher level of security of knowing who's in our building and when and for how long and for what purpose. And that's really a great start. That technology capital levy will help us in the area of security with replacing cameras that are very old and analog and moving more to a digital format, especially at our high schools where it is really critical to have the security cameras available. Then the operational side of the levy referendum that was also successful will help us address class sizes at the high school, which really have grown to be some of the highest in the metropolitan region. So it became very problematic, very difficult for students to learn and to do the kind of learning I was just describing, really collaborative learning where students are moving more and not sitting in rows in desks that isn't really conducive to learning in the 21st century.
So the City of Lakeville really does value the partnership we have with the school district. In fact, one of our community values in our strategic plan is helping provide high-quality education. Could you maybe talk a little bit about some of the partnerships that we enjoy and work on every day?
Sure. I mean, there's been a lot of projects in the last year that we've worked collaboratively with the city, but overall we have a strong partnership in a lot of ways, including just the partnership we had in assisting us in that last referendum. But I think the highlight for me was the Stuff the Bus event with the mayor and getting on Twitter and having our little competition and raising money and school supplies for our students for Ready, Set, Achieve. So that was a really exciting partnership, and people liked it. Both of us got a lot of feedback and a lot of great comments and a ton of school supplies as a result, so that was a lot of fun. But our ongoing partnerships really are about being in unison and developing our communities. So yes, we need good schools, but we need good roads, and we need great parks, and we want the city to continue to grow, and we want to be sure that there are viable jobs in this area south of the metro. So those are the things that we have ongoing discussions about, and we continue to engage in partnership activities. Although we didn't receive the grant, we did write one together along with the Chamber of Commerce, and we learned so much about each organization's goals and objectives, and through that process, that was just invaluable.
So along with that grant, that was focused on helping develop a workforce for the next century. Could you talk a little bit about what the school district is doing and how the city and the chamber have a shared goal on that?
Yes, I would love to. So last year we applied to the Minnesota Department of Education to be designated as an innovation zone in Minnesota. In order to get that designation, you have to have at least one other partner school district because it's more of a regional designation. And what they want districts to do is to think out of the box, really redesign education to be much more aligned to the economy and to the jobs that exist or will exist. So that's been incredible work, and when we got word from MDE that we did receive that designation, we immediately started working in partnership with the city and with the chamber on identifying the jobs in the economy that really will be probably some of the better jobs, the more professional jobs, as well as an abundance maybe of areas that there may be jobs but not people to fill them. And so what we found through our research and our partnerships really was around the medical healthcare field, as well as continued focus on global business. So many businesses now have a global connection. So we have worked on creating a program that we would start next fall of 2016 that we are referring to as MINCAPS, and that stands for Minnesota Center for Advanced Professional Studies. It's a mouthful. But it's a half-day program for juniors and seniors, and they can take it for a semester or they can continue in that program for the full 2 years of their last 2 years of their high school. They can choose a pathway each semester and really find out what it would be like to work in that pathway. So it's more than just job shadowing or work experience. It's really working on real-world projects in that field and learning the skills, both professional skills, interpersonal skills, as well as technical skills that that field demands. And so the partnerships are really critical with government, with business, with the chamber, because that's what keeps our curriculum relevant. You know, we can't just stay in our schools and then expect to be relevant in what we're teaching to kids. We have to be connected to that sector and really understand what's going on, what's changing, what are the trends, and then constantly be updating that so that it truly is an experience for students that will help them understand, is this something I'm passionate about? Is this an area that I would like to work in?
Great. So a theme in Lakeville for 2015, and it will be for many years to come, is that we continue to grow. A lot of people are moving to our community. We continue to add lots of houses. And one of the things that we hear from is that the main attraction to the city of Lakeville is the high-quality school district. What do you think are the reasons for that, and what do you want to do to let people know about what a great school district Lakeville is?
Well, I think number one is our high-quality workforce, and it's very specifically the teachers. We have teachers that are so dedicated to the students, and it shows through the relationships that they build, the community involvement, and things like this, willingness to make sure that what they're teaching and the learning experiences are up to date and engaging for students. So that's number one, because if students don't come to school and have a motivating experience, then it's not such a great learning experience. So that's number one. Of course, we have excellent facilities and beautiful schools. So that certainly doesn't hurt either. But it's just our dedication to excellence too. We welcome all learners. I think we are a very inclusive school district, and as our diversity grows, I think that we are definitely poised to meet any sort of challenges that come along with that, to make sure that we stay a very competitive district offering a world-class education.
And you talked a lot about the world-class education, but you're obviously successful in extracurricular activities, both schools, both athletics and otherwise. Are there any you'd like to highlight and talk about over the past year?
Well, there's so many. It seems like, okay, who's going to state next as far as athletics? And there's a lot of pride around athletics, both at North and South and throughout our community and all of our schools. But the activities, too, are amazing. We have an incredible DECA program with kids rising to higher levels. And what we're seeing now is exponential growth of our robotics programs. And, of course, that's a renewed interest in STEM type of jobs and activities, but kids love the robots and kids love the programming, but they also learn professional skills, presentation skills. So we're seeing that area just really grow, and lots of kids making it to very high levels, even international levels of competition.
Great. Well, Dr. Snyder, thank you and congratulations on a great 2015. I know you're looking forward to a very productive 2016, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today in this look back at 2015 in the City of Lakeville. If you'd like to learn more about anything we discussed today or any other information, go to www.lakevillemn.gov or call 952-985-4400. Thank you for your support in 2015, and I look forward to working with all of you in 2016.